had to go to the Senate. I was compelled to go to make what is called a personal explanation because of some very scandalous allegations made by Senator Wade Mark. And they were made against me in my capacity as the Minister of Finance and also in my personal capacity. These scandalous allegations received wide coverage in the newspapers and on television last night. The front page of the Express, there is a screaming headline that states Mark calls on Finance Minister to come clean on property purchase. $12 million question for Colm. And then when you go to page 5, the same headline is repeated. Mark wants answers from Colm on $12 million property, and then goes on to give a complete account of the, let's use the word scurrilous, allegations made by Senator Wade Mark. Now, what is terrible about this Express story is that while Wade Mark was making these false, defamatory, crazy, obscene allegations in the Senate yesterday, I was contacted by the Attorney General because the Attorney General was dealing with a bit of legislation that is designed to prevent persons who are the true owners of property from hiding their ownership. Because there's a lot of talk in Trinidad and Tobago about persons who benefit corruptly by having other persons buy property for them, and then the properties are not registered in their name, they're just kept for them until a certain period of time elapses, and then the true owner shows up. And there are all sorts of allegations about fraud and so on with respect to property transactions, so that the legislation in the Parliament yesterday would close a system where people could hide behind a blind trust, for example, or a trust, not just a blind trust, but a trust, where the real beneficial owner is not known and is not obvious, and a group of people are there in a trust holding interest in property for somebody else. And that is an abuse. It's part of corruption. So that in his contribution to that debate, Mr. Mark zeroed in on me and made all these wild allegations, which I've dealt with, but I want to repeat because there's some things that I wanted to say in the Senate, but we are bound by rules of decorum in the Senate, and there are some things you cannot say when you're in the Senate because the presiding officer will not allow you. And similarly in the Parliament, there are things that you would want to say when people make these kind of scandalous, false allegations that you can't say because it's not parliamentary. So I'm holding the press conference now in the public so I can say what I wanted to say. And firstly, let me say that as far as I'm concerned, Wade Mark is a sick man. He's sick. He's also a coward because this is not the first time that he has made these types of allegations about me, all of which are false. They're always defamatory, and he always goes like a coward into the Parliament and makes these false allegations, personal allegations, not just against me, but against my family. But he won't come outside and say them so that I can sue him for libel. So I wanted to say this morning in the Senate that Mr. Mark is a weak coward. Couldn't, so saying it now outside, and he's also a compulsive liar. So I've already dealt with some of the issues that were dealt with this morning in the Senate, but it bears repeating because there may be other people who are tuning into this press conference. Yesterday, Senator Mark said that as Minister of Finance, I'm somehow involved in money laundering and land fraud. He said that I was somehow associated with the non-payment of millions of dollars in stamp duty due on the purchase of a piece of land in Port of Spain. He claimed that I had purchased a piece of land for $1.7 million, which was worth $12 million. And that by purchasing it for $1.7 million, I had evaded taxes because I had put the wrong price on the land, and therefore the stamp duty that would be attracted would be much lower. He made a whole series of other false allegations about trusts and that the police should be called in. And this is typical of Senator Mark. The entire thing was a figment of his crazy imagination, a complete fabrication, a complete lie, as is normal for Senator Mark. He is a compulsive liar. And what bothers me about the UNC is that they will promote people like Senator Mark, a weak coward like that. That's the kind of people they want. That's the kind of man they put as the Speaker of the House, a coward and a liar. So let me tell you what the facts are. In 2012, when I was in the opposition, I was not a minister. I purchased a company that has as its sole asset a piece of land in Port of Spain. I did not buy the land. There's no document that exists on this planet Earth that Wademark can produce that would show that I purchased a piece of land in Port of Spain or anywhere else for $1.7 million. That was actually worth $12 million. That is a complete fabrication and a lie, and typical of the type of lies that Wademark is famous for. The fact is, I bought the shares in a company, and being aware that there are persons like Mark outside there who like to damage people's reputation, I was very, very careful. And I knew that the law that applies to stamp duty makes it clear that when you are buying the shares in a company, you either pay stamp duty on the value of the shares as determined by a chartered accountant, or you pay stamp duty on the price that you pay for the shares, and you pay the stamp duty on the higher amount. The shares in this company had been valued at just about $30,000. And using the calculations in the stamp duty legislation, the stamp duty would have been about $150, because the stamp duty on shares is $5 for every $1,000. So that would have been 30 1,000s by $5 would have been $150. But knowing the kind of people that are in the opposition, I made sure to get a valuation done by a reputable chartered valuation surveyor. And that valuation came in at $7.5 million for the company. The company's only asset, as I said, was a piece of land. It was not a going concern. It was not a functioning company. It was just a company on the books with one asset, a piece of land. So the chartered valuation surveyor, one of the most reputable in Trinidad and Tobago, valued the company, the land that was the sole asset of the company, at $7.5 million. The asking price for the company was $7.5 million. So having received a valuation for $7.5 million from a reputable valuer, I paid $7.5 million for the shares in the company. And then my attorneys also, because I need to be careful because of characters like Wademark, my attorney then went to the Board of Inland Revenue, presented them with the valuation from the chartered valuation surveyor, presented them with the purchase agreement between myself and the former owner, presented them with the share transfer, and registered the share transfer with the Board of Inland Revenue. That was in January of 2013, just 1 month afterwards, as is allowed under the law, and paid the stamp duty assessed by the Board of Inland Revenue. And as I indicated in the Senate this morning, this is the actual Board of Inland Revenue receipt, the Board of Inland Revenue stamp here with the amount of the stamp duty on it that was registered by my attorney in January of 2013. Here is the valuation report on the property from November 2012. So this valuation report was done November 2012. I purchased the shares December 2012, and I registered and paid the stamp duty January 2013. So every single thing that Wade Mark said was a tissue of lies. What I found very disappointing in terms of the media, Express doesn't print a word of the rebuttal that was made. Not a word. They print all the lies from Wade Mark. Guardian. Again, all they print is the lies from Wade Mark. I was shocked to see the Newsday actually printed the truth, where the Newsday printed a rebuttal that was done by the Attorney General, which dealt with the lie that I had paid $1.7 million for a property worth $12 million, and the AG put into the parliamentary record that I had in fact paid $7.5 million based on a valuation and had complied with the law in full. That's in the Newsday of all newspapers. On the television last night, the media ran all of Wade Mark's lies. They did not run the Attorney General's rebuttal. So I'm very disappointed in the media. That is not responsible journalism, to print the lies of a fellow that is a custom lie, and they know that too. And then the Attorney General comes with his information to refute those lies, and the media decides they're not going to publish that. Makes you wonder what's going on. And you see, the reason why I've had this press conference is because the opposition knows that they have questions to answer. There are several members of the opposition, members of parliament, former ministers, who have questions to answer about questionable matters under their tenure. Some of them are before the courts. Some of them are being investigated by the police. Some of them are wanted by the police. And you see, this PNM won the 2015 election because the country was fed up of the UNC corruption. And you see, these lies that Mr. Mark put into the system were designed to tarnish all of us with the same brush, because the UNC knows it can't shake off this corruption label that they have. So they want to bring all of us into it. So they concoct these lies to try and embroil high-profile PNM politicians in their nonsense. And that is why I had to go to the Senate this morning. And that's why I've had this press conference. And you feel I might be using rough language. I could use rougher language, you know. But I will simply say that Mr. Mark needs evaluation. He's a sick man. He's a weak coward. He's a compulsive liar. And I dare him, as I've done on all the previous occasions, when he has lied about me and my family, come outside and say, well, your lies outside in the parliament. And that is the former speaker of the UNC. So I open the press conference now to questions.
Before we take your questions, I want to remind members of the media to please use the raise hand tool. And we have our first question from Yolande Thomas.
Hi, good afternoon. Yolande Thomas from Caribbean Lifestyle Communications. Minister, you mentioned libel. Are you going to sue Mr. Mark for his accusations, given the fact that he has parliamentary protection?
This is the problem. The man is a coward. He would never come outside and come out from the cover of parliamentary privilege and tell his lies. I can't sue him. But I could talk about him though. Unfortunately, he knows that he has parliamentary privilege.
We have another question from Vern Extavo. Hello, Vern.
Hi, good afternoon. Vern Extavo, 91.9 FM. Minister Imbert, as you described that transaction with the purchase of the shares in the company and that kind of thing, is this a usual kind of thing to happen? Is it regular that businesses would do that particular kind of transaction?
Happens all the time. It's commonplace. You see, when you buy a company, anybody that would buy a company, you buy the assets of the companies. Some companies would have machinery. Some companies would have property. Some companies would have contracts. Some companies will have employees. It's standard practice when you acquire a company. You acquire the shares in the company and you pay the stamp duty with respect to the shares. It happens all the time. I mean, all over Trinidad and Tobago, there are thousands of companies, and most, if not all of them, own properties. When you buy the company, you buy the property associated with the company. Standard practice, nothing unusual.
If I could, I'm permitted a little bit of a follow-up. In terms of the property itself, is it the same property that's currently being developed, and is it being developed to the building codes in that particular area of Port of Spain where it's being built?
Let me just make this very clear, because that is something that Senator Mark tried to mix up in people's minds yesterday. The company owned the piece of land in Port of Spain, and I bought the company, and as the asset of the company, the property is being developed, yes, and it got full town and country planning approval. That's another bit of dishonesty that is being put into the system by the UNC. That property, that development, got full town and country planning approval in 2014 from the Ministry of Planning and Development, when Bo Tewari was the Minister of Planning and Development. Full town and country planning approval. And subsequently after that, it received fire approval, WASA approval, city corporation approval. It is compliant with every single statutory code in Trinidad and Tobago. And you see, because I'm a person in public life, I can't do what other people do. I can't go and start to construct buildings without approvals. A lot of people do that. I can't do it. And therefore it is particularly disappointing for me when I go through the system and get all the approvals from every statutory authority. Dot every I, cross every T. Do not start construction, don't touch a blade of grass until I have the final approval from the final statutory authority. I do that, and yet I have to hear this nonsense. So the answer to your question is yes.
Our next question is from Anthony Wilson, Trinidad Express. Hello, Anthony.
Good afternoon, Kavita. Good afternoon, Minister, and good afternoon to all your viewers and listeners. My name is Anthony Wilson from the Trinidad Express.
I think we know you, Anthony. Good article on NCBJ, by the way.
Okay, thank you very much. Could you give us the name of some of the people involved in this approval process, like the Chartered Valuation Surveyor, the name of your attorney, and also I'd like to find out how much stamp duty did you actually pay?
Those are personal and private matters. This is a matter of public record. You can, if you wish, you can go to the company's registry if you wish and check all of that. I would not want to reveal personal and private matters. What I can tell you is that the valuation surveyor has been in business for almost as long as I have been an engineer, and I graduated in 1979, so do the maths. So you're dealing with one of the most reputable, one of the most well-known and experienced chartered valuation surveyors in Trinidad and Tobago that did the valuation back in 2012. With respect to the attorneys, it is one of the most reputable, oldest, and well-known firm of solicitors and conveyancers in Trinidad and Tobago. I would not want to call their name. I can tell you what the stamp duty is. You can work it out for yourself. As I told the Senate this morning, the stamp duty is the higher of $5 for every $1,000 in terms of the nominal value of the shares, or $5 for every $1,000 in terms of the purchase price. So you can do the maths. The purchase price was $7,500,000, so that's the higher amount. And you take every $1,000 within that $7,500,000, and you multiply by $5, you'll get $37,500. And that's what the receipt is for. And that is completely consistent with the law.
While we await other questions from the media, Minister, is there any point that you would like to expand on?
No, just a vex. Fed up of these lies. Fed up of Wade Mark. He's a sick man.
We have another question from Yolande Thomas.
A short while ago about the applications for the salary relief grant. Can you apprise us of that? And
no, this press conference is to deal specifically with this defamation that Mark did on me yesterday in the Senate. This press conference is not about anything else.
Okay.
Sorry. We'll have another one to deal with all those other matters shortly, I can assure you. Perhaps early next week, I'll have a press conference to deal with the status of the VAT refunds, the salary relief grant, etc., etc. I give you that assurance. Maybe Tuesday, we'll do that, and I invite you to hold your fire until then. And I'll bring all the data in terms of how many applications and so on. But this press conference is just for me to do what I could not do in the Senate, and to say that as far as I'm concerned, Wade Mark is crazy and he's a compulsive liar and he has a habit of lying.
We have another question from Anthony Wilson. Hello, Anthony.
Is anybody else?
Anthony?
Yes, Minister, since you prodded by Senator Mark, have raised the issue of this development, can I ask you what you may consider to be an impertinent question, but where did you get the money for the development from?
Okay. In my statement to the Parliament this morning, I indicated that I have declared the ownership of this company and its value to the Integrity Commission in 2013. When you are a person in public life, you are required every year to file a declaration of your assets, your liabilities to the Integrity Commission, and also a declaration of registrable interests. So I acquired this company in December 2012, and the first time it would have come up to be declared to the Integrity Commission would have been in May of 2013, when I was required to file my declaration for the year ended 31st December 2012. And at that time, I did declare my ownership of the company and its value. In addition, since this went through the system, through a bank, I had taken a bank loan for part of the purchase price. We've taken a mortgage on the property, and you can see that when you go into the company's registry, Anthony, which is available. You can go and check it yourself. Go and pull the file on the company. I had taken a loan, we had taken a loan. So we had to go through the full works with the real estate agent, because as you know, or you should know, real estate agencies are a listed business that are subject to the Financial Intelligence Unit. And therefore, since this involved real estate to some extent, even though it's a company, but it involved real estate, I was required to fill out all of the Know Your Customer forms, all of the forms that deal with the transactions of a certain value. I had to prove where every cent came from. I had to demonstrate that in addition to the loan, this was the accumulation of savings over my career, my 40-year career. And I proved that to the satisfaction of the Financial Intelligence Unit, the bank, the real estate agent, and anybody else associated with it. So that is the answer to your impertinent question.
We have a question from Vern, Street 91.9 FM.
Yes, thank you very much, Kavita. Yes, good afternoon again. Minister, considering that this conversation about parliamentary privilege continues to come up, if you can give some insight into parliamentary privilege and why it exists, and whether you would feel that it shouldn't exist or its usefulness in the parliament. You know, it would be useful to get some insight.
Parliamentary privilege is a very old tradition. Goes right back to the origins of the Westminster system, the British Parliament, where it was felt that parliamentarians should not be fettered in terms of their freedom of speech. So that it was felt that a parliamentarian should be allowed to make statements in the parliament on matters of public interest without being subject to litigation and lawsuits for libel and slander and defamation. But with that comes the whole question of responsibility. And that's why you have a privileges committee in the Parliament and why things like this are a matter of privilege. I could take Wade Mark to the privileges committee. He could be sanctioned. There have been situations where persons have been taken to the privileges committee for lying, as Wade Mark has done here. And after a process, because the person is allowed to bring somebody to defend them, they bring witnesses, they're allowed to give testimony, they have a right to be heard and so on. And there have been opportunities over a period of time, instances where persons have been suspended. I am aware of somebody being suspended for 6 months for lying in the Parliament. So that is the sanction that exists in our Parliament at this time, that if somebody lies and you can prove that they lie, then they can be suspended from the Parliament. But I'm a very practical person. The fixed recess in the Parliament starts on the 3rd of July. It's about a month from now. My experience with privileges matters. I have been on the privileges committee of the Parliament now for over 20 years. And I've participated in many hearings dealing with persons who have committed a breach of privilege. Usually it's a lie. Usually the parliamentarian is accused of lying. And these things take a very long time. Some of them take years because the accused person always tries to mount a defense that I didn't mean it, or somebody told me this and I thought it was true. And you have to allow them to go through that whole long drawn out process before you can find them guilty of breach of privilege. And then there's a sanction, which is usually suspension from the Parliament for a period of time. So if the fixed recess is in 1 month's time, I'm not going to waste time with Senator Mark, because I know that it will take about 6 months with him coming and trying to pretend that he didn't know and somebody tell him that and he had a right to believe whatever he was told. That is the man, that is what he does. So I'm not going to waste time on him and his foolishness. But in terms of privilege, it's important. But there's also a question of a breach of privilege, and there are sanctions against people. I mean, in the recent times, you had a question of Dr. Monilal being sanctioned because he said something about Dr. Hines, I think snake have lead for you or something so. And he had to apologize. And until he apologized, he was not recognized. And I know that people have been thrown out of the Parliament for a period of time because they just lied. So that is the sanction against lying in Parliament. You could be suspended. But I do think parliamentarians need to have freedom of speech, but it is something that parliaments all over the world have been looking at in terms of abuse, because you can't, this kind of thing just can't. A man will just come in here and tell these dirty, filthy lies and laugh about it. So that's my answer to your question.
I have a next question from Jensen Levin, Newsday. Hello, Jensen.
Hi, good day. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we are.
Hi, good day, Minister. You said you're not wasting any time with Wade Mark, but you spent some time formulating a press release, and you also called this press conference to deal with it. Wouldn't you want your name cleared in the Parliament as well, but in the Senate as well, even outside of this press conference and the press release? So that would be a motivation to take this matter before the Privileges Committee.
Thanks for the advice. I'll seriously consider it. I was given the Hansard earlier today, so I haven't had a chance to read the entire Hansard. I've been going in newspaper reports, and thank you very much. I may very well take a motion of privilege at the next opportunity to the Senate in order to deal with it and to make the point. But I also want to return to my original point. The UNC knows that its Achilles heel, its weakness, is corruption. They know that. They know that in this election, corruption will feature. Allegations of corruption, suspicions of corruption. The UNC knows that they're in deep trouble when it comes to matters of integrity and matters of alleged corruption. And therefore, this and other things like they keep terrorizing my colleague Stuart Young, another series of lies all the time about his brother and so on. It's always a tissue of lies. They're doing it because they want to embroil us in their nonsense. They know they're weak when it comes to corruption, and we will have none of it. So that's why, another reason why I held this press conference, I do not want to be associated with the UNC and the corruption. They want to put in people's minds that all politicians are corrupt. Well, I have been in public life since 1991, and no one can point a finger at me with any justification and accuse me of the kind of corruption I have seen coming out of the UNC in all its incarnations over the last 25 years. So I want to make that point. The UNC wants to drag us in to the filth that they find themselves in.
I have another question from...
I have two other questions. Can I
Is it on this?
go ahead and answer them?
Is it on this?
Yes, it's on this. Yes.
Yes, be my guest.
The first one, you called Wade Mack some stuff that I may not be legally allowed to repeat.
It's all right.
Let him
come outside and deal with it.
Well, that's why I wanted to find out, are you at all fearful that he may be willing to take you to court for these things?
Mr. Mark has lied about me. I mean, for example, with the acquisition of the Galleons Passage. Month after month after month, I had to go and listen to Wade Mark lying about the Galleons Passage in the Parliament, lying about me, telling me they have evidence about bribery and so on, telling me that in the Parliament. And he wouldn't come outside and say it. The man is a compulsive liar. I'm not afraid to say that.
And my second question is to follow up on the impertinent question that my colleague Anthony asked. You answered how you got the money to purchase the property. What about the development? Where did that funds come from?
Bank loan. Come on, I'm an engineer now since 1979. That's 41 years. Before I got into politics, I was in the construction business. When we have been in opposition, which has been on several occasions between 1995 and 2001, and also between 2010 and 2015, I have returned to the construction business while in opposition. And therefore, I've been in this business for a very, very long time. And I've been associated with numerous property developments in other countries. For example, in St. Kitts and Nevis, in the 1996 to 2001 period, I was associated with the development of over 200 low-cost houses for the government of St. Kitts, which was financed by financing from Republic Bank in Trinidad. In Grenada, for example, I was associated with the construction of over 100 housing units against financed by a local bank in Trinidad. I think that was Royal Bank at the time. And other banks have financed a number of developments that I've been involved in over my 41-year career when I'm not in government. And this follows a traditional pattern where you construct a building, you sell some of the units, you take deposits from the owners, and you finance the facility with a bank loan. So is that an answer to your question? The money isn't falling out of the sky from a tree, you know, it isn't coming from a vault underneath my house, like some members of parliament alleged to have, you know, big holes underneath the house full of cash. I am an open book. This development is being done through the front door, above board, with a bank loan.
We have another question from Anthony Wilson. Hello, Anthony. Anthony, are you with us?
All right, I think we could...
No, I'm with you. Hello.
Anthony, I think we could kind of close off now, if nobody has any more questions. But go ahead, I'm not preempting you on this one.
Okay, you said that part of the $7.5 million for the purchase of the company was through a bank loan. Could you tell us, and could you tell the nation what percentage of that $7.5 million came from a bank and what percentage came from you?
I wouldn't tell you that, Anthony. I think you're getting a little too personal now. As I said, I have declared this to, and you know that, that's why you're laughing. I have declared this to the Integrity Commission for the last 7 years. You're getting too personal. As I told you, it was partially financed by a bank loan and partially financed by savings over my 41 years in the construction business. Okay? Are there any more questions?
No
Thank you very
further
much.
questions.
Okay.
At this time, I wish to thank members of the media and the viewing public for joining us at this press briefing. Do not forget to follow the Ministry of Finance on Twitter and Facebook for timely and factual updates. So enjoy the rest of your day and thank you.